This is Join Us in France, episode 242. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is a podcast where you'll hear pragmatic advice for your next trip to France. And hopefully you'll get inspired to go beyond Paris and see the rest of France as well as Paris. On the podcast, I invite travel enthusiasts, such as my guest today, Carrie Turner, to join me for conversations about their trip, how it went, what they loved, what they didn't like so much, and give tips about all of these places from their perspective and their genuine, remember, these people have nothing to sell, so these are genuine recommendations. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/242. And on the show notes, you find all these words spelled out that maybe you didn't catch when you were listening. Join Us in France gets support from Patreon supporters, one-time donors, and soon-to-be-released GPS-aware tours. I will have more news on that after the interview. Bonjour Carrie, and welcome to Join Us in France, or should I say, bienvenue sur Join Us in France.
Merci Annie, bonjour.
Bonjour. It's lovely to have you. We are going to talk about your visit to Brittany and Normandy with a multi-generational family, which I know is something that worries people because it's not that easy, is it?
No, it can be a little dramatic at times. I planned the trip, so of course I planned what I want to do, and then we get there and the baby's not agreeable, and my mom wants to go shopping or to the beach and my dad's wandering off, so it was great, but we had our moments.
So you had your parents with you. Who else was there?
Yes, so it was my parents, my husband and I, and our 18-month-old daughter.
Okay, yeah, that's a good age, isn't it? That's when they start running fast.
Oh yes, she's a fireball.
All right. So you speak French?
Yes, pretty well.
Pretty well, because you spent some time in college in France?
Yes, I studied abroad in Paris. I lived on the Rue de la Harpe.
Oh, Rue de la Harpe. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Good times.
Yeah.
And then I got my degree in French education. I taught for a year and then hated it and went back to France as a jeune fille au pair.
Okay.
And spent another year and some living there. I finished au pairing and I worked for a company called Baby Langue that teaches English to children. So I was their nanny.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was really great.
Anyway, let's talk about Brittany and Normandy and your trip. I assume you landed in Paris?
We did. We landed in Paris. My husband and I and the baby got there 2 days before my parents. So we were kind of trying to adjust in Paris. And then my parents came over and we picked them up. We got our rental car and went directly to Chartres and then had dinner there and drove out to Brittany. We spent 6 nights in Brittany and then moved over to Normandy for 4 nights.
Okay.
And then we finished our trip, Giverny and Paris.
Okay. So this is a big area you covered. You must have spent a good amount of time in the car.
Yes. I tried to break it up where we weren't in the car more than 2 hours.
Okay.
At a time. But yes, we drove a lot.
Okay. And did you have particular interests for this trip?
Specifically, the whole thing started because we were trying to do a Europe trip with my parents, and my dad one day last year had the epiphany that it was the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Mm-hmm. We had tried to go on our last family trip. We went out to Normandy, and it was a Grève day, and we missed the beaches completely. And it was something my dad and I have always wanted to do together. He's a huge World War II buff. And so we got super emotional when we figured out that this was our chance.
Yeah.
So we started planning, and then I built in Brittany because no one else had ever been, and I wanted to do something, get some spots in that I hadn't been to. So we did. I had done the Mont Saint Michel and Saint Malo before, but I hadn't done any of the rest of our trip.
Okay. So tell us briefly. So you went directly to Chartres, and then to Normandy. So tell us what towns to Brittany. Sorry, tell us what towns you hit.
Okay, so we stayed in Saint-Pierre-de-Pléguen. I would say it's pronounced Plesguen.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And so it's like 15 minutes east of Dinan.
Okay.
So we went to Dinan the first day, and then we drove down to Quiberon to see Carnac and Auray.
Yes, so Carnac is the stones thing.
Right, standing stones everywhere.
What is that like? I've never been. I keep wondering what it would be like.
Well, I went with the family I worked for before, and it was amazing. It was kind of a cloudy day, and there was no one there. And we walked along in the fields as long as we wanted to. And I have read a lot of like Arthurian legend kind of stuff, and so I absolutely loved it. And my dad was kind of hoping for the same experience, and we got there at 4:00 in the afternoon, and it was nuts. There were people everywhere. They were sold out. So he didn't actually get to go in the field, but we did the little train tour.
Oh, okay.
And saw the town. So it was still lovely. And there are lots of places you can pull off if you plan ahead to not go into the actual alignement of Carnac. You can find other places to go.
So there are other places where they have the stones, but
dozens of different places you can visit. And even in the Gulf of Morbihan is the island that has standing stones on it. So yeah, you can find them everywhere.
So it's just like in the cartoon, the Asterix.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's just like that. Like they got these things stuck up in the ground. Nobody knows why.
Everywhere. Yeah. And they're huge. I mean, it's very impressive.
Maybe they were tent poles.
Maybe.
Are they too far to be tent poles?
We're talking like miles of stones.
Yeah.
And they're spaced out. Yeah, I don't remember, maybe 12 feet between them. It's been a long time.
You could hang like animal skins and make shelter out of that.
They're in perfect lines. And when you stand and you just see these perfect lines, it's like, I told my husband when I was trying to describe it, it's like cell phone bars. How you see the graduated bars, it's like an entire field of cell phone bars, but they're 12 feet tall all the way down to like little 1 foot stones.
That's spooky.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So you don't know why. I mean, they didn't tell you we know why exactly. No, okay.
Something ceremonial. I mean, it's the same as Stonehenge. Why is this here exactly?
Yeah.
It's probably religious, probably.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So we stayed that night. We actually left our stuff at our Airbnb in northern Brittany and stayed at one in Morbihan area in Auray, because it was cheaper than driving back, and it was $30 to stay there for the night.
Oh, yeah.
So we did that so we could go to Vannes the next day, and then drove back up to northern Brittany and did Saint Malo and drove to the Mont Saint Michel from our Airbnb there.
Okay. All right. And did you manage to make it all the way to the top of Mont Saint Michel with your parents and the baby?
We did, yes.
Oh, wow. So they are fairly agile. I mean,
yeah,
they're mobile.
My mom's 60, my dad's almost 70.
Oh, yeah.
They were fine. That wasn't a problem.
Yeah, they might have had to stop and catch their breath a couple of times, but that's
probably no more than me. I mean,
it is taxing on anybody unless you're a marathon runner or something.
Yeah, no, we're not. None of us are athletic besides my husband. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that was great, and I had heard from your podcast, to time it properly. So we got there at 3 p.m. to park. And we we did the marignotte, the horse-drawn carriage to go down.
Oh,
because my daughter loves horses. So
very nice.
we got on the front row, and the driver gave me a tour the whole time. It was amazing. He told me everything I could possibly want to know about the Mont Saint Michel, about the horses, Bambi and Ulysse.
Bambi and Ulysse. Oh, that's cute.
And, how they feed them, how much they work, and let my daughter hold the reins. So that was great. Dropped us off the door. He told us that it was super slow that day, that we were in luck, that there were barely any tourists there. And it was true. Like as we were driving down, there was a huge line for the buses. I mean, 10 buses worth of people waiting probably. And we got there, and the last time I went was in February in 2006, and it was packed, like shoulder to shoulder to get up to the Abbey. This time, we saw people, but it wasn't crazy at all. And in the Abbey, we probably saw 10 people during the tour of the Abbey.
So what day were you there? Do you remember?
We were there Monday. Actually, I wrote that down because I knew people would want to know that for planning. It was a Monday at 3 p.m. that we got there. Okay. And I had checked, there's a coefficient chart on their website. So I found the highest coefficient day for our trip and planned to go that day. Okay. And so we got out of the gift shop at the high tide was at 2011, 8:11 p.m. And we got out of the gift shop at 6:30, sat down, had a snack, and right at 6:45 is where we started noticing the tides come in. And my mom had said, maybe we should go eat and come back. And I was like, let's just sit for a second, because they said to be here 2 hours before high tide.
Yeah, it's fast.
And sure enough, between 6:45 and 7:15 was exactly what, we wouldn't have cared to stay after 7:30 for sure. And we saw it rush in, and we saw the first the ripples and then whirlpools forming where it was coming in from 3 different directions. And I think that was definitely one of my dad's favorite moments.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And you timed it right, so that's great. Most people who go don't ever check that. They don't know. So do it like Carrie. Check.
Yes, check
these
definitely
things.
The tide chart, and that was the main thing that was super helpful that I found, and that was one of the top moments for everybody. I think even me, having gone before they when there was still a road and not a bridge.
Right, they hadn't done the causeway yet.
Yeah, there were tour buses parked in front of it when I went before, and it was packed full of people. This was a totally different experience and so cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sight. I keep complaining about the quality of the restaurants and the poor customer service and all that, which is real. But if you know that, you can plan not to spend a fortune eating at these lousy restaurants.
Yeah. Well, we asked the driver, and we took the bus back. That was easier and cheaper. I think the horses had already stopped. And we asked the driver on the way there what restaurant we should go to get the salted lamb. And he said to go to the Pré Salé. So we went to that. I got the lamb. I actually wasn't that impressed. But the other food was good. Yeah. The oysters were amazing. Yeah. And the dessert was amazing. So
yeah, the oysters were amazing because the sea makes those.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, they were so.
The restaurant has nothing to do with it.
And then on our way out, driving back, it was kind of twilight, so we got the great view of the. On the way out, stopped and took some pictures. It was very pink from the sunset, so that was cool.
Oh, that's great.
The Saint Malo was the other best thing about Brittany. We walked out to the Petite Bay and saw the fort. And I love a good causeway through the ocean. That's like, to me, one of the coolest things. The St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall, we did that last year and absolutely loved it. So this was kind of similar. And when I went to St. Malo before, I didn't do anything but probably drink beer and eat food. So we got out on the beach and played, and my daughter played with all the like sea creatures and
That's cool.
hermit crabs. And my husband and I hiked up to the fort, which was kind of crazy with the shoes that we had on. And you can't really even see the path, but there is a path up there. And they closed the doors as we were in there, and we knew we had to be out before the tide came in.
Yeah.
But they didn't warn us, this is how long you have until the tide leaves.
Oh.
I knew what time low tide was, and that's what I was kind of basing it around. And so I went to leave, and the door was shut, and I kind of had a freak out, and I'm looking for my husband. Where is he? And they were like, "Oh, it's okay. You can just go out in the boat with us. Go back in the boat." So I guess that's kind of just what they don't tell you that it's time to leave, because they'll just drive you back. And I was like, no, but my child is down there.
Oh yeah, I gotta get
my
back.
My parents. I have to go out
swim.
This door. So
I guess that's the good thing about having your parents with you, is that you have built-in babysitting.
Yes. And it was, we didn't ask them to do that too much, but they did watch her for dinner one night. It was our 5th anniversary. And then, a couple times my mom would just sit with her and let us do all the history stuff.
That's great.
The other thing about the St. Malo, before we move on, is that they told us that you can rent the fort to sleep in on Airbnb, which is super cool. I know there will be people that want to do that, but also know that we looked at the beds inside, and they have one of those old beds that's like the wooden box, and it has doors, and the mattress is inside. It completely closes off from the wind or whatever. And while we were in there, we looked inside, and it was like a nasty old mattress with just covered in sand.
Oh,
just like a full layer of sand on it. So just a warning. That's my first experience. Well, they told me that. I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to stay here. And then I looked at that. I said, no, never.
Hopefully they would clean it up before they make the beds.
I don't know. I know there were some students staying out there that night, so maybe they made the mess. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. Okay. Good to know.
Okay. Okay, so then we moved over to Normandy, and let me see, I'm pulling up my list. We had planned to hit for sure the American Cemetery, Aeromonche, Pointe du Hoc, Omaha Beach. We had all kinds of stuff on our list,
right.
And generally we have been pretty good in our travels to hit everything we want to. Maybe have to ditch one or two things, but that was before my daughter was 18 months old. This trip was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So we ended up going to Pointe du Hoc the first day, and that was pretty much it. In Cannes, we had an Airbnb that was hosted by Christine, and she was a great hostess. She lives in a building with a courtyard behind it and another building that she's renovated recently into 3 different apartments. There's a lovely garden. All the amenities that you would want if you're eating at home, which we had to do a lot with the baby.
Yeah.
So, there was coffee there was sugar, there was butter. She had put orange juice in the fridge, all those kinds of special touches.
Very nice.
Very clean, etc. And she had let us know when we checked in that the traffic would be an issue on D-Day.
Yeah.
And so we looked up all the road closures online, and then she also let us know that the presidents, I assume, of France and the U.S. were eating 2 blocks away for lunch. So we were going to be under extra strict rules in our area. They cleared all the parking the day before.
Yeah, lockdown.
And she gave us a letter that said, undersigned, I, Christine, have these people staying with me so that we could get back in, but that we would
probably made you a little nervous. I mean, what's happening?
We were mostly just worried that we wouldn't be able to see anything on actual D-Day, which was like the whole reason we planned this trip. So
right.
she said, you might have to leave before 6 and you might not be able to come back before 11 p.m. And there were other people, my parents talked to the other people staying there who were also there for D-Day, and they thought, you'll probably be able to leave. It's just the coming back that's an issue. So we didn't wake up super early or anything. We just got up like normal. I threw blankets, pillows, food, toys, everything we could need if we were stuck out until 11 p.m. in the car. And we left. And actually, as we were leaving, the gendarme said, you can't come back till 5 p.m. And we're like, oh,
5 p.m.
Fine.
Yeah,
great.
That's fine. Yeah.
Awesome. So we knew from the road closures online that we wouldn't be able to get a car into any of the 5 beaches, like the main areas, and that certain highways were going to be closed.
Yep.
So we found a little strip in between Juneau and Sword, to straight north of Cannes, basically, that the roads weren't closed, and just started driving. So we I think we put Lyon-sur-Mer into the GPS.
Yeah.
And started driving. And we would just come to a roadblock and they'd say, nope, you can't go this way. And they'd send us another way. And then our GPS would reroute.
Okay.
And then we'd get to another roadblock. So it took probably an hour to an hour and a half to get to the ocean, where it should have taken like 25 minutes maybe.
Right.
But it was great because we went through all these tiny villages. I actually have the place I want to stay on our next trip.
Oh, there you go.
Because we passed through like the most perfect village ever. And
what was it called?
I don't have it written down.
Okay. Well,
I do know. It was Plumetot.
Plumetot.
Yes.
Okay.
Pluetot. I loved it for some reason.
Okay.
And we ended up at Luc-sur-Mer.
Yeah.
And it was great that we parked, and all the shops on this tiny little main street had World War II, like vintage, like the vitrine, the like displays. Okay. So like the coiffeur had old 1940s curling irons in the window.
Oh, cute.
And the clothes shops had vintage uniforms. And they were like really playing it up, and a lot of the shopkeepers were dressed up and
yeah. When I was there last year, it was the same. Like the ladies the ladies at the tourist office were all done up, like wartime kind of hairdos and makeup and clothes, and it was really cute. It's really nice.
And we had seen that kind of obviously like vehicles, as David said, vehicles everywhere on your drive. So for 3 days now, we had been seeing these encampments in vehicles and everything. But this little town had the flags hanging, like every town did, of all the allies. And the tourist information suggested going into the park of the Baleine, the whale park, because they have like a whale skeleton, and there were animals and a playground, and we actually stumbled upon some sort of little, I don't know what kind of room it was, if they have it there specifically for exhibits, but it was a British gentleman whose father was a commando during World War II, and he'd spent the last 3 years creating his own mini museum based on like his father's letters, and he had uniforms, he had rations, he had
so a lot of old stuff. Yeah,
and was telling his personal stories. So my dad sat and talked to him forever, and then we ate lunch. In Brittany,
in the D-Day area around D-Day time, there are a lot of people who come. It's like a pilgrimage.
Yeah,
and you have people who will come and tell you their war stories, and there's always people that I wonder, was he really there? Did he really write? I mean, he wrote the book, I'm sure, but how? I don't know. I'm always a little suspicious of a lot of this stuff, but there are a lot of people who turn up in uniform and stuff like that, and they're very old by now. So
this guy was in his 60s probably, and so. It was his father that was in the war.
60s is not very old.
his father. So that's not what I meant.
Okay. Phew.
But
because I'm getting awfully close.
We had some curry moule frite for lunch that were so good. And as we were sitting there, the C-47s flew over the town.
Nice.
So, it was just, if you're like a World War II, especially airplane nerds is what our family are.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So this is important for people to remember, is that if you go to the D-Day areas around D-Day, on D-Day, the day before, the day after, probably the weekend after, possibly the weekend before, there are going to start to be a lot of events, a lot of things happening, not just at Omaha Beach, but everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere.
And we pretty much did none of the events that we had planned on. There was a ball that we wanted to go to, but with bedtime, it just wasn't going to happen to go to a 9 p.m. ball or to fireworks on the beach or the 6 a.m. Everybody goes out at the time that the troops landed on the beach. We didn't make it to any of that stuff, but we still saw plenty of amazing things. We met a Canadian guy at Juno Beach whose 3 uncles were killed. And he's like, basically his family's like the Canadian version of Saving Private Ryan in there's no other place besides the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor where there are that many brothers together buried in a cemetery.
Wow.
And some French students had named a foundation after his family and were reading the names of every Canadian killed during World War II. And he started the names at midnight, and we met him out on Juno Beach, and I read some of the names, and it was just like a super like to look at those names of these 18-year-olds in this book on the place it happened with family members. It's just
it's sobering,
super memorable.
Yeah.
We kept running into stories like that wherever we went.
Yeah.
And
the other thing that people have to keep in mind is because there are a lot of world leaders, especially because this was 75th anniversary. So all the world leaders had to be there. And so there's a lot of security. And security means limiting access, pretty much. So if there's something that you particularly want to do, then you have to find a hotel where it's walking distance.
In the area.
Right.
Exactly. That's what we talked to him about, because he was blocked out of the ceremony at Juno Beach. We were just like 100 yards away from the actual site because they had it blocked off for a ceremony. And he was there, maybe by invitation. I don't know. Like, his family's name is a big name for Canada, but Justin Trudeau was there. And so because he didn't get there on time, he was like 5 minutes late, they wouldn't let him in. Right.
Yeah, it's very controlled. So you have to understand that if that's what you want to do, pick one thing you want to do that day on June 6th, sorry. And just be very close to that so you can walk to it and plan on spending plenty of time standing around waiting for things to happen.
Exactly.
And it's a similar thing with Tour de France. And I know this has nothing to do with it, but at the Tour de France, the same thing happens, is they close roads. And so if you want to be in a specific spot, you've done your research, you want to be there, show up a day before, the night before, and then you'll be there. Otherwise, not going to work.
Well, the British man we had spoken to actually let us know that we could get, to certain places from there, that he had already tried it out. Yeah. And so at that point, actually, we were trying to get somewhere. I don't even remember. And there was a line of military vehicles, like 30 vehicles long, all these Dutch people with their vehicles. I mean, there were like
trailers.
The entire Netherlands were in Normandy with their World War II vehicles that week.
Yeah.
I mean, young people, I was like, if I were 22 again, this is where you would find me. I would be finding this group of young people with army jeeps from World War II. And these would be my new best friends.
Yeah, no, it's very fun. If you can do it, but plan it. Don't overplan. Don't think, on D-Day I'm going to be on this place and this place and this. No, you won't, because they won't let you go anywhere. Unless
So-
you're Justin Trudeau, and then, then you get around.
Yeah. But so the next day, the 7th, was our last day to do D-Day stuff. So we had, a bunch of stuff on our list. Aeromanche was where we ended up having the best time. We hit the American Cemetery that morning, and a couple other places, but ended up at Aeromanche, and we parked and got out of the car and started walking down to the beach. We didn't really know where we were. I had been there, but up on the bluff where the actual monument is. And so we were actually down in the town, walked down. We were on the probably the far west side of town. And as we're walking down to the beach, a duck comes out of the water. Like it was actually like driving around in the water at Aeromanche, and comes up, and all these dudes are just sitting on the top like, yeah. And we met a bunch of Americans who this was like their moment to shine. They had spent $5,000 per vehicle to ship them over from New York.
Wow.
And they were basically just like duding out, like, we're all here together. We spent this money. We've got our command cars, and we are living it up here in Normandy.
That's great. That's great.
So now my dad and husband are like, how do we get one of these cars?
Well, in Normandy, it seems there are a lot of them. When you're there, I mean, last year, it was like you couldn't throw a stone without hitting either an old motorcycle or an old car or something.
Yeah, for sure. And so that I told my husband, we made a pact in the car. Before we die, we're going to buy one and restore it.
Oh, that's
for
fun.
empty nesters. So,
that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah, so we walked through town and saw some French people dressed up, like young French people dressed up in resistance clothing and uniforms and stuff. That was pretty cool.
So it seems to me that your favorites of the whole trip were really Mont Saint-Michel and the D-Day celebrations.
Yes.
Would you say
definitely.
Your father got his were his hopes met, like expectations met?
Yeah, I think he's never impressed by what you think he's going to be impressed by. So the parachute stuff, he was kind of like, it was fine. But then the Mont Saint-Michel blew him away, and the I think the Aeromanche he really loved too. So he was fine. He liked it, and he was just happy to be there in the middle of all of it. Honestly, it's how most people say you should do France anyway, right? You just live there in the moment.
Yeah, be there. Yeah. Were there any specific difficulties having to do with being a family of multi-generations? I mean, it seems to me, since your parents were quite mobile, it actually was an advantage for you, not so big, so much of a problem.
The biggest issue, I mean, we got pretty crabby between all of us at certain points with food. We're used to being in Paris a lot, and you can find food anytime. So while I knew from you specifically, like 12 to 2 were going to be our windows, I was like, surely we'll be able to find food if we're hungry, or especially if the baby's hungry. And she has allergies. She's actually allergic to 3 different things. So
so you have to be cautious.
Tree nuts and dairy make it hard to find restaurant food a lot of times.
Oh yeah, I bet.
So the food was bad. We only ate dinner out twice, which is I'm there for the food. Like that's one of my main reasons for traveling. And
but that's hard when you have a baby.
She was just ready. She was ready to go to bed, and I can't sit in a restaurant and have her misbehave. So.
Right, because if you were in America, you'd say, well, we'll just eat earlier. Well, guess what? You can't.
Right, but that's not an option. No. And once we got into Paris again, it was fine. But out in the countryside, not an option. Yeah. And so we tried to get her to nap where she woke up and it was lunchtime. And that worked fine. Lunch was generally okay, but dinner was rough. And luckily, there were enough meals that I missed, like grocery store meals from just living with French families and stuff, that I would just cook. We did like merguez because you can't get a good merguez in America.
Right.
And we did popiette and different things like good meats specifically and fresh fruit and things like that.
Yeah. So you got your fill of French food, but just from the grocery store instead of restaurants.
Exactly.
It's a different experience, but it makes total sense when you have a baby, and especially a baby with food allergies. You have to be you have to be more accommodating.
And since I've been home, I came home and I made boeuf bourguignon because I didn't get anything like that there, and I've been I'm gonna make creme brulee tonight. So
very good.
I'm just.
So be very
careful. I just am getting my fix here.
Creme brulee, when you mix in the egg yolks, don't mix it in when it's hot, okay? You have to follow the recipe, otherwise it will not work.
Yeah, the first time I made it, I had that. It was like curdled egg yolks. But you've mentioned several Airbnbs and places like that, and I will put all of your references, everything you've sent me with the details day by day, all of that on the website. So under your episode, it'll be under guest notes. But so if you want to see all that, go to the guest notes. But what I want to know is, what would you not do again? What would you do differently? Because you were in a multi-generational family, or just because you wouldn't? Okay, so first and foremost, we didn't spend enough time in Normandy. Going back, I would have cut most of Brittany. Specifically, Dinan, that was rough with a stroller. I mean, the issue with the stroller is you can't live with it and you can't live without it. We're used to piling everything in it. So we started Dinan and we went to the market. We had all this junk, so we piled it in the bottom of the stroller. Well, halfway down the what's the road that goes down to the river? Jerzu, Jerzu.
Okay.
It's like this beautiful medieval cobblestone street with an incline of like 45 degrees or something crazy. And it was a hike after we had done the 2-level market, and we had to walk from parking because it was market morning. It was too much to do with a baby. We could have actually probably driven down to the harbor and just maybe walked from Dinan to Léon, or taken the boat ride from Dinan to Léon and had more fun than hiking down that hill. It was awful. So I probably would have cut that completely. We did really enjoy the Gulf of Morbihan. We went to the beach of the Arche Blanche. Arche Blanche? I don't know.
Arche Blanche?
It's like it's a natural stone arch that sticks out on the Quiberon Peninsula.
Okay.
And so we did a coast walk in that beach, and I love English Channel beaches, and eastern coast of France with like all the rocks and the cliffs and stuff. That's one of my top things. So that was great, but I maybe would have cut Van and cut Van.
I mean, it's beautiful, but it's another little medieval town with.
We did have our best meal there. Which it was chez la Mère Sissou. So that was kind of worth it. But I would have pared down Brittany to probably just Saint-Malo and maybe a day at the Gulf of Morbihan, and spent more time in Normandy so that we could just kind of drive around and see what we wanted to see. And
right, because you covered a lot of ground.
Yes. And that, we took the baby carrier with us some, and that's great if your child will stay in it, but ours won't. So it helped for sleeping, but for things like Saint-Malo and Mont Saint-Michel, you can't take a stroller. So that's just a little tiring.
I can't imagine a stroller up Mont Saint-Michel.
No.
Shoot me now.
So that's the main thing. It's just focusing on the one thing that was important, and I got a little bit ambitious because we'd had so much luck.
Well, you're young, and that's when you do crazy things with your children. It's when you're young and you have the energy. Because when you get older, you're like, oh, no, that looks too hard. I'm not doing that.
And, well, besides just the car, because the car is okay if my daughter will nap in the car seat and stuff. So, and there's everything to see in the car, but we also stayed 6 different places, and that was rough getting packed back up everything in the suitcase and moving it. And we had planned to go to Giverny, but I didn't buy the tickets. We didn't know if we were going to go one day or the next. So I knew I needed to buy the tickets ahead of time, but I waited till the day before.
You weren't sure. Yeah, because they're timed. Giverny tickets you buy for a specific day, morning or afternoon.
Yeah, and so we went on the website the day before, and there were no tickets available. I tried 3 different, the Ticketmaster and the other 2 options. They were all sold out. And so we could have gone and seen if we could get tickets. But that's basically, if that was our option, go and see or just move on, we always moved on because we didn't have the time to waste in a line or driving somewhere if we didn't know if we could go. So that happened actually twice. We tried to do the Canal Saint Martin because we've done every Paris site like a million times. So we try to do different stuff. So this was like, I had ridden a moped on the Canal Saint Martin before, but I hadn't really spent time there. So we were trying to do the Canorama. And that was the same thing. I don't know if it's because in France, like, you can't buy the tickets that, there's a time limit up until this point. You can buy it online. Afterwards, you have to go to the ticket office.
Probably. That's probably what happened in both cases, but it's hard to know.
I figured that might be the case, but I didn't want to chance it.
Yeah, because they don't want to open the tickets too early or too late.
Right. Yeah. So that's definitely something.
Right. If you try and get them too early, it's going to show sold out when really it's not. It's just that they're not open yet. And if you go a few hours before, maybe it's not going to show them either. So.
Yeah. So definitely I just recommend 48 hours in advance. Try to solidify if it's a big tourist thing. Like we did the Atelier des Lumières. I bought those 3 weeks in advance. And I said, we're just going to have to be here at this time, no matter what.
Are you the one who posted this video of this cute little girl? That was so cute.
That was so cool. That was like one of our other top moments.
So explain what happened. Explain what happened.
So it was during the Van Gogh exhibit. There was a room that was all mirrors. And so they had the ceiling has basically, it's like a kaleidoscope. Of swatches of whatever's on the walls at the moment. And so there was kind of a colorful light going in there, but it was just geometric patterns on the ceiling. And she goes and she sees herself in the corner. And because it's the corner, there are 4 of her, or she sees 3 of herself. And so I got a video of her like dancing with herself, but it looks like she's like a ballerina because there are 4 of her. It's like synchronized swimming or something.
That was the most adorable thing.
That was, I was just standing there like, this is so amazing.
Yeah, that was cute. But it's on the Facebook group if you want to go search for it. It's adorable.
So Paris, the second time in Paris was much better than the first time when we first got there because she was adjusted to time and we were able to do a lot more stuff. But it took 5 days for us to get onto time where we weren't awake at 2:00 in the morning just with a screaming child.
See, that's what happens to me. It takes me 5 days, no matter what, to be comfortable in the new time zone. And there's people who say, "Oh no, it just takes, I just take a sleeping pill or whatever, and I'm done." I'm like, no, that's not normal.
I can sleep because I'm so sleep deprived anyway. I got on the time first day, but advice. I hate to say this, but between like 15 months or basically when your child starts running and your child turns 3 is probably the worst time to travel.
Right.
Go while they're less than 1 because it's amazing because you literally just strap them in and do whatever you want to do and they're just there for the ride. But after that,
or wait until they're a bit older.
Or like my niece, my niece has been traveling Cornwall with my in-laws this past week, and last year when we went with her, she was kind of whiny, but now she's almost 3 and she's done a great job. So
yeah, it's. I mean, you're the only person who knows your kids, but you take that into account.
Right.
That
That's
kids
true,
don't absolutely love being taken around to all these places that they won't remember anyway. So
yeah, she just wanted to run, and it was hard for me to feel comfortable in most places just letting her run.
Yeah. You don't want to do that. That would not work in a lot of places. But it sounds like you had a good trip, right?
We did. It was great, and we're gonna take a little break, I think.
Yeah, give it a bit.
We did the Euro Cup in 2016 and had the absolute best time. So we're gonna try to do that next year, and I think we're gonna just travel locally until that and give her some time to grow up a little bit.
Well, I am delighted that you came on the podcast to tell us about all of this. It's good to know that it can be done even if there are some difficulties.
Right. It was worth it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any last word of advice that I forgot to mention, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll post if I think of anything that people absolutely have to know. I'll just make a post in the Facebook group.
Make a post and maybe copy me on an email so that I can put it on the episode page for this episode, because Facebook, people will see it and then 2 days later nobody knows where it is anymore. It's gone.
And I'm gonna blog about specifically the Normandy stuff. So I'll try to post a link to that to the website, with more specific details and stuff for people to help plan.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carrie.
You're welcome. Thank you, Annie.
All right. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Susan Shatmeyer, Patty Lind, and Monique Chouanière. I guess in English you might try to say that Chouanière. It's a French name. It's Chouanière for pledging to support the show on Patreon this week. And my thanks to all the other patrons who support the show month after month. Thank you so much for giving back. Visit patreon.com/join us. Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes, to see the different reward tiers, and thank you so much for giving back. My thanks also to Jenny Wenham and Denise O'Connor for sending in a one-time donation by using the green button on any page on joinusinfrance.com that says tip your guide. Anyone who donates via Patreon or gives a $20 one-time donation gets an invite to a secret Facebook group where it's much smaller than the big Join Us in France closed group on Facebook, and where I am more active and answer your questions. For my personal update this week, I went to Paris for just the one day, but it was a very long day, to test the GPS-aware tour. I tested 2 of them on this trip, Ile de la Cité and the Marais. Doing the test and using the app all day really helped me understand how to make the most of this technology. And I think you will enjoy these tours because it really brings the area to life, and it's quite simple to use. And also, especially in the Marais, where it's so easy to get turned around and lost, it helps you get to the best places efficiently. How soon will the tours be available? I'm hoping a week or 2, but this is my first time going through this, so I'm not sure what all the steps are involved, but I'm working on them as fast as I can. And 2 bizarre things happened to me on that trip. One, someone tried to steal my stuff, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second. And 2, I almost lost my ID at the security check at the airport. I'll tell you about that because it's quick. When I approach the security area, where you put all your stuff in bins, I had just a backpack and my printed boarding pass and my French ID in the other hand. French ID is like this. It's like a credit card, just bigger, maybe 2.5 times the size of a credit card. And so I had both of these things in my hand, and the guy who was supposed to help me just grabbed my ID and my boarding pass and put them in the plastic bin. And I go through the stuff, and when I get to the other side, my ID was gone. And I panicked because I wanted to get home, right? So I talked to one of the persons, and moral of the story is the people who do the security check do not need to see your ID. Don't let them take it. Put it away in your bag. For some reason, I've done this dozens of times. I've put my passport even in that bin, and it never jumped out. But I guess the guy must have just put it, instead of putting it in the bin, he probably put it just slightly to the side of the bin, and it dropped underneath the system. They found it eventually. The problem is it took a good 5 minutes because there are so many people working that line that it's hard for them to stop everything and look. And anyway, it was very stressful. But all ends well. In the future, I will never put my passport or my French ID in the bin. No more. And the other thing that happened to me in Paris this time is that somebody tried to rob me. Okay, let me try and get through this quickly. It's pretty straightforward. I was going up some stairs and somebody was right behind me and tried to unzip my backpack zippers and get stuff out. Now, I had seen it coming, so I was hypervigilant. And when I realized that he was right behind me, I knew. And so I turned around at the sound of the first zipper. No, it was actually the third zipper he managed to open. So things go pretty fast. And I turned around and I yelled at him, and no big deal, nothing happened, but I was really, really hyper about it. And I was really, your heart's pumping and you're just so angry that something like this has happened. So let me give you some advice as to what to do about situations like this, which are really, really common in Paris. The only way to prevail against these people is to have nothing on you. And by nothing, I mean, okay, take $20, take $40, however much you think you might need in cash that day. Take one credit card. Apply for a passport card so that you have official ID with you, but it's not the ID you need to go home, okay? But do not take your driver's license. Do not take your work ID. Do not take anything like that. That would take a while to replace. Take as little as possible. And if you do that, then you can relax, because even if they get you, they're not going to get that much. The issue for me is that I was just in Paris for the day, so I didn't have a hotel room, and I had to have my ID. I had to have some cash, whatever. And I was doing some work, so there were some things I needed. But be hyper vigilant. These people are really easy to spot. The problem is it's hard to describe them without sounding like a jerk, because as far as I can tell, it's always the same people who do this, and that is Roma people. Now, I got taken to task on the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook for calling them gypsies. And yes, I've since done some reading and realized that probably I shouldn't use that term. I didn't mean it as a racial slur. I didn't even know it could be seen as a racial slur. But, whatever you call them, Roma people, Romani people, Manouche, Zigane, whatever it is, these are people, and they're not all like that. I never even think that they're all like that, because I know some personally. There's some that live in my village, 5 houses down, and they don't go around robbing people. But there are some of them that, they just arrive in Paris, and what they do is they try to rob tourists. And in Paris, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of police that can deal with them. You will notice lots of military police, lots of people with machine guns. They are completely ready to deal with a terrorist. But dealing with pickpockets is not a big priority. That's because Paris doesn't really have a municipal police force. They have national police, and they have gendarmes, and they have, all sorts of high-powered cops that can, jump off buildings and put out fires, but they don't have people to protect you against these petty thieves. And so don't have so much with you. It worked out for me. But it could have really, if they had taken my ID, I would have been in trouble. Although, as I just told you, I almost lost my ID. So yeah. So anyway, I'm really excited about the GPS aware tours. I'm happy I went to Paris to do this, but it's a little bit stressful to encounter unpleasantries like that. But otherwise, Paris was just as lovely as ever. If you want to recommend the podcast to someone who already listens to podcasts, just tell them they'll find the Join Us in France Travel podcast anywhere they get their podcasts. If they listen to music but not podcasts on their phones, tell them to search for Join Us in France on Spotify or Pandora. We're also on the smart speakers. You can find us on the smart speakers as well. And if they don't normally listen to anything on their phones, send them to joinusinfrance.com. And thank you for listening and for spreading the word. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week of trip planning. There will not be an episode next week because I'm going to the beach. I'm really looking forward to it. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2019 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.